Hello friends, it's Magpie here, and today I'm going to talk to you about America's hidden gem, the Black Hills of South Dakota. My boyfriend and I live in a camper van full-time. She is a 1987 Winnebago and her name is Winifred. So we have traveled about 14,000 miles within the past 7 months in Winnie, and the Black Hills continue to be one of our favorite places that we visited. The Black Hills is an area in the western part of South Dakota. This area is truly beautiful and unique and super underrated. You don't hear South Dakota as a popular tourist destination. The Black Hills had a lot of firsts for us in the terms of our new van life lifestyle, and one of those things was the first boondocking site. Boondocking is where you camp for free with no amenities usually, and it's a lot of times on public land, and South Dakota was the first state that we did that in. We had a site right on the river. It was really beautiful. A huge storm came through that night, which was also our first storm in Winnie, and it was really scary. She's a high profile vehicle, so when that wind kicks up, she's swaying, and we were scared in the morning. We saw a bunch of people in that campsite actually get stuck because of the mud, and thank God we have dualies and we were able to get out fine. South Dakota was the first state that we felt truly alone on our van life journey, because up until this point we had been close to family and friends where if we needed any help at all, we knew that we could rely on them. And this comes back later when we actually do have our first mechanical issue ever in South Dakota, and we didn't have anybody that we knew in the area to help us. So we started off our journey by going to Badlands National Park. But before we actually went into the park, we went to a place called the Ranch Store. It is a great place for family and people of all ages. It's like a little gift store, but it's right next to a prairie dog town, which is just an area where the prairie dogs live in their little holes. And these are like domesticated prairie dogs. They have been domesticated for like 3 generations now, the guy said. And you can buy a bag of peanuts for $1 inside the store, and you can go and feed all of these prairie dogs, which is really cool. The time that we went here, there were babies that we were feeding. This little prairie dog right here was more interested in Nick's feet than the peanuts we were trying to feed him. But they all have their own personalities, and it's a really neat activity to do. It's got this huge, I forget how many tons this thing weighs, but this huge sculpture of a prairie dog here that's fun to take pictures in front of. And it's literally right outside the park, so it's an easy stop on your way into the Badlands if you're planning on going anyway. Next, we actually went into Badlands National Park. This was our first national park on our van life trip, so it's really significant and nostalgic, I guess, for us. The Badlands is, again, a great park. From little kids to grandma and grandpa, everybody can enjoy this park. There's really only one road that goes through the entire park, and it's a beautiful road to drive on. It's got a lot of pull-offs that you can stop at to sightsee. Fortunately and unfortunately, it was rainy this day that we went hiking, so there weren't a ton of people out on the trail. It wasn't that crowded, but we did get rained on quite a bit. We actually did the 3 most popular hikes in the same day. My favorite trail that we did was the Notch Trail. This is a very famous trail here. It's the one with the ladder. Just a really unique hike, and you gotta watch out for rattlesnakes. We then did the Window Trail, which is paved the whole way, so it's really good again for people of all ages. You can put a stroller on it, and you get a vast view of the Badlands from here. And the last trail that we did this day was the Door Trail. This one is really neat. You actually get a chance to like walk on the Badland plateaus, and so you actually feel like you are in the Badlands. It was really neat. We got some super cool pictures, especially with how gloomy the sky was and stuff. I think that our pictures turned out really nice here. And on our way out, we saw the infamous bison that hangs out by the Leaving Badlands National Park sign. Look for him while you're there. He loves to hang out there. Visitors see him there all the time. And make sure to snap some pictures from a safe distance. There is a great boondocking site right outside of Badlands National Park where you can camp for free, and it does have a view of the Badlands, which is really neat. We actually wanted to stay in the Badlands for longer, but the weather was so crappy that we ended up leaving a day early and headed straight to Custer State Park. This is, again, a really popular destination here in the Black Hills. This is probably the best wildlife sighting area that you could go in. There's like a wildlife loop that you can drive where you're almost guaranteed to see some bison or other wildlife. We ended up doing a backpacking trip here, which was our first backpacking trip on our van life adventure. We did this to practice with our gear and prepare for our thru hike of the John Muir Trail because our permit date was coming up. So we wanted to do this trail as like a last hurrah, a last test of our gear and food set up to make sure that everything was good to go. There's actually a whole through hike in South Dakota called the Centennial Trail. It is a 111-mile trail that goes from Bear Butte to Wind Caves National Park. And we did a big loop. It was like a 40-mile loop. A lot of it was also through the Black Elk Wilderness. We backpacked all the way to Mount Rushmore, so we like went into the Mount Rushmore National Monument with our packs on, with our trekking poles. Felt really out of place there. And this trail also included climbing to the top of Black Elk Peak, which is actually the tallest peak east of the Rocky Mountains, at an elevation of 7,244 feet. The views up here were gorgeous and really allowed us to take in the entirety of the Black Hills. I will be honest and say that I truly struggled on this backpacking trip. I had never carried my gear this long before. This was like my first multi-day backpacking trip ever, and I was nervous about going onto the John Muir Trail. Like, this was a wake-up call for me. And I think I scared Nick a little bit too. I remember not too long ago he admitted to me that he was scared for me to go on the John Muir Trail, and he was scared that we wouldn't be able to finish if I basically didn't get better at backpacking. In spite of that, this is definitely where I fell in love with backpacking. Again, I had never done it before. I didn't even know if I enjoyed backpacking, if I wanted to continue to do it, if the John Muir Trail would be the only trail that I ever did. But from the point that I did this section of the Centennial Trail, I knew that backpacking was going to be a big part of my life from then on out. So again, the Black Hills means a lot to me because that is truly where I fell in love with my sport. And as you can see from all of these pictures, the area is really beautiful. And even though it was gloomy the whole time and we got absolutely poured on our last day, we had a lot of fun and enjoyed our time backpacking through the Black Hills. We had another beautiful boondocking site in Black Hills National Forest where we were just surrounded by those ponderosa pines and had a beautiful sunset view. And unfortunately, it was still rainy, so we had to dry out all of our gear inside. We had all kinds of fans rigged up, and we then made our way to Spearfish, South Dakota. Now, Spearfish itself is a small town, but the Spearfish Canyon is a beautiful area. This road is so pretty. Even if you don't like hiking or backpacking or any of that, you can just drive through, and I promise it will be worth your time. These pictures are from Bridal Veil Falls. It's the biggest waterfall there. It's right off the road, so you can just pull off and see it, and it is very impressive. We thankfully had really good weather that day, and we were planning to go on a hike, but while we were stopped for lunch in one of the picnic areas, we noticed something was wrong with Winnie. My dad installed this rack on the back of Winnie to hold a big toolbox and our bikes and all kinds of stuff. And because we had so much weight on that rack, it was starting to bend. This was an immediate issue because we obviously cannot have that snapping. So it was our priority at that point to fix it. We dropped everything that we were doing and tried to come up with a solution. This was the first of many tests that we've had in van life. Luckily, Nick and I have been together for about 9 years now, and I think that we work really well together under pressure. We were able to stay very calm. We drove to the library in Spearfish, did some research, and decided that the best way to fix this was going to be to find someone to weld the rack upright. Now, the only issue is that it was pretty late in the afternoon, and the next day was Sunday, so we were scared that a lot of the welding places were going to be closed, which did turn out to be the case. And we eventually found one privately owned welder who was open and willing to see us in the morning immediately. And so we brought Winnie over to him, pulled it into the garage, and he fixed it up within an hour and only charged us like $40 for it. The rack has been great ever since. It has never bent anymore. We are very thankful for him for getting us in on such short notice and helping us continue our adventure. Unfortunately, our mechanical issues were not finished there, and that night our boondocking site was up a pretty big hill, and Winnie is old. She's a 1987. If you know anything about older cars, you know that they overheat, especially on uphills, a lot. Frankly, we just had not driven Winnie enough to know like what her limits were and how to prevent overheating like this. So she did end up overheating on the way up the hill, and we were stuck for an hour or so as we let her cool down, but she was able to make it up the rest of the way with no issues. Those mechanical issues and struggles obviously sucked in the moment, but looking back, we grew so much much as a couple. We grew so much as travel partners through those experiences that I definitely think it was worth it. The next day we visited the Spearfish Fish Hatchery, and I actually liked this place a lot more than I thought I was going to. These are all different kinds of trout that they raise in this fish hatchery. It has a lot of history. They have like little museums around here. You can feed the fish, so it's again a really good place for kids. They also have little hikes around there that are pretty where you can see the fish hatchery and the spearfish from above. The locals of Spearfish love the fish hatchery. Anytime we talked to a local and asked them what there was to do around here, the fish hatchery was at the top of their list like every time. And that concluded our adventures in South Dakota. It was a state that I don't think we expected to enjoy as much as we did. We highly recommend the Black Hills. They have so much to offer, and we didn't even do all there is to do there. There's Wind Caves National Park, Crazy Horse, Deadwood, Sturgis. So if you're looking for your next place to vacation, you might want to consider the Black Hills as your destination. Since the Black Hills of South Dakota were again the first place that we felt truly on our own, and we had overcome so much over that small amount of time that we were there, we left South Dakota feeling like more confident van lifers, more confident travelers, and I feel that was really important to our success in our van life trip. We headed over to Wyoming and continued making our way towards California for our thru hike of the John Muir Trail. Thank you all, as always, so much for watching. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Happy trails!